Another thing I like about the MacBook Air is that it instantly turns on. Like once you open the lid, it just instantly turns on. Like me. Hey guys, and welcome to Nomadic Dmitry channel. It's been quite a nice year, I should say. Well, not everything was perfect, there were some problems there and there, but I think it was pretty nice year in terms of what? In terms of that, I was just traveling around this world like crazy and being in many countries, good experiences and all that, so it was pretty much perfect in that sense. But we also have very interesting stuff to discuss, and this is the M1 chips, Apple Silicon chips. As you can see guys, it's been like more than a year since we got this first version released, so MacBook Air on M1 chip was a phenomenal, like really good kind of computer, right? And now we have more stuff like that, so now we have MacBook Pro on M1X chip, and we're gonna have much more interesting stuff coming out next year in 2022, right? So it's been awesome. I feel like we're going somewhere. I feel like x86 is probably not that, it's probably gonna be there around for many years to come, but it seems like something is happening, something in the air, and I think it's gonna transform the whole computer kind of ecosystem. I feel like in the future even laptops on x86 gonna be transformed into ARM at some point. I mean, even those Windows, those bulky Windows laptops are gonna be replaced, and we're gonna have something much more interesting to basically use. It's not there yet, so we cannot say about the future, but we can only discuss how we progress through the year with our M1 platform, right? And so what I can say is that finally I'm able to use this for almost all my tasks. It doesn't feel like I'm using this computer and I'm limited in some way, but there are some things to discuss, right? And some things that I really miss on my computer, on my M1 MacBook Air. And the first thing, of course, I miss running x86 virtual machines. My gosh, I mean, so many times I want to just to be able to copy something from my old computer or from like flash drive and just like be able to run x86, but it's not possible. No, you need to use UTM, and UTM is really bad in terms of x86 kind of virtualization, and nothing else is able to even perform that. Yes, we have QEMU, but QEMU is basically the same as UTM. UTM is just like a front end for QEMU, and the performance in terms of the speed is like really bad. So I would not recommend anyone to actually try running x86 virtual machines unless you're like really desperate and you have no other computer around. Then maybe yes. That's what happens with the VMs. We not getting anything anytime soon, like any really good solution for running x86 images. The next point is that development is basically hit or miss those days. Yes, you can write great web applications, you can work and all that, but if you're working with a mobile app development by any chance, then I think it's a bit complicated. For example, the Android Studio just recently got the M1 version, right? And yes, while this version works, there are still some components that are kinda not really aligned with this whole system. For example, the virtual machines, which is like Android virtual machines with your images running, with Android images running, those are still limited, and I think there's just like only one image that basically you can use natively on your ARM. Everything else is emulation, and emulation works really slow, as we can know it, as we can understand it, right? And then the second thing is the Java virtual machine. It has not been ported to M1 Mac yet, but there's been some solution provided by Azul. So Azul is like this kind of solution you can install on your M1 Mac, but Azul is like not exactly something from Oracle, right? So it's kind of a bit different stuff. So I don't know, I probably do not trust much stuff from third-party sources, but you can try it. You can still use it for development, basically the environment is still there, but I feel like there's just something is not really great in that sense. Of course, if we're talking about running your iOS applications and iOS emulator, it's all fine, it's all great, but it's just like not everything is perfect. And also talking about React Native, which is quite popular those days, I've been having some problems to compile images on my M1 Mac. I needed to basically somehow like manually kind of tinker around it, just like customize it to be able to run it on my machine. So it's not perfect in that sense as well. So if you're doing some mobile development on iOS, it's gonna be perfect. If like, for example, using the Xcode and all the official means that Apple provides, it's gonna be just fine. But if you're talking about something that like third party or something like that, it's probably gonna be a little bit harder to adjust. And it's probably gonna take more time. So if you're like Android developer, maybe you should stick for x86 for just a bit more and see how it works for you, and maybe in 1 or 2 years we're gonna have everything perfectly ready and working on M1 platform. I'm pretty sure about that. Then we're talking about HomeBrew, right? HomeBrew is a package management system. And yes, HomeBrew has been like really universal way of running stuff on your Mac. Basically, you just use it like in Linux, right? You basically install packages the way you want and it works. But again, there are some problems with M1 because not all the packages has been converted to M1 platform, and you actually sometimes need to run this x86 kind of packages and like in emulation, Rosetta 2 emulation, right? So it's not perfect. And then again, we're talking about command line tools and all that. So frequently I'm just running a terminal in the Rosetta 2 emulation mode. Sometimes like the ARM version is not perfect and you need to run x86 version of the same package, for example. So it's like, and guys, I also do miss the boot camp. So an ability to run a second system on your computer, just like be able to boot it into it, like Windows system, for example, or Linux system, it was pretty much great. And we used to have the refined kind of bootloader, right? I have a separate video about that. It's been just perfect and just like I use it the way I want, I boot any system I want, it was perfect. But of course we don't have such kind of capabilities on M1 Mac. While you can load Linux and there have been projects, for example, the project called Asahi allows you to actually run Linux on your M1 Mac. But there are still problems. It's like it's not ideal. For example, I think there were some problems with GPU drivers because of, again, this is like custom-made hardware by Apple, right? You need to like reverse engineer all the stuff. And also the Wi-Fi card, I think there were problems with installing that driver. And also installation is not smooth, it's not easy. It's like, well, it's easy if you basically are ready to deal with some bugs and all that. It's possible to install. But then again, what exactly you're trying to achieve, right? It's not as smooth as it used to be with Intel Macs, of course. Unfortunately, maybe it's gonna be better in the future because we're gonna have more solutions and this Asahi project is still going on, still going strong, I hope, but I don't know, we'll see how it works out in the future. As of now, it's not ideal, but you never know what's gonna happen next, right? Software compatibility is still a problem, as I said, like you cannot run some virtual machines and all that. Those kind of hypervisors are not really running natively, but we all know that. But it's not only that, but some plugins, for example, plugins that musicians use, are not really working well in M1 platform. So there's still problems with that. I think that some hardware is also not really compatible with M1 Macs, so it's like, yeah, hit or miss. Not ideal. Some people prefer to stick around with Intel Macs for a while and just see how it works for them. The other thing is a Docker, guys, and Docker, yes, it's available for M1 platform, and I know like many of you use this for development. But I think that, again, when we talk about Docker, even though the base is compiled for M1 Mac, there are still some problems with x86 kind of images, right? And I think that Docker custom kind of emulation is not really smooth compared to Apple emulation, like Rosetta 2, right? There's a Docker, but the way it works, I don't know, probably it's better to stick with Intel kind of version for a while. For some time, until it actually becomes really usable and perfect. We'll see. Talking about the bootloaders, right? We used to have the awesome bootloader which is called Refined, and I loved it, but seems like it doesn't really work on M1 Mac as of now. I think it's compiled for ARM64, so I'm not really sure what's going on there, so we'll see how it works out in the future. And since there's basically just like some solutions there and there, just like scattered around, but nothing really comparable to what we used to have with Intel kind of solutions and compatibility when it comes to running third-party operating systems. We expected that, but that's how it works. Now, let's talk about the good stuff. Finally, let's talk about the good stuff about M1 Mac. So the good stuff is that, first of all, I think this is like the best laptop for travel. I mean, traveling around with this small and efficient laptop is just awesome. I mean, it just runs so many tabs at once, it's fast, and I mean, I use it for everything. It's good, it's really good. There's like no fan noise at all. Like I cannot even use the computer which has a fan nowadays. It's like every time I hear this fan, I'm like, what's going on? What's up? I cannot even like justify this. So yeah, like for travel, just the best laptop. Great. And I think it's gonna be a really good laptop for gaming as well, because now you can use your iPad, many of the iPad or iOS games there, and Apple probably gonna be transforming even more stuff from iOS to M1 Max. So we're gonna see some really good stuff there. So let's see. Another thing I like about the MacBook Air is that it instantly turns on. Like once you open the lid, it just instantly turns on. Like me. Also guys, previously I told that there are some problems for developers, and yes, something is probably not that efficient and good as it used to be on Intel, but there's still some hope. First of all, it's going to be improved, and second thing is that web development is really great. So if you're doing the web development on like Visual Studio Code or wherever, I think it's really great. It works well for your purposes, and I think it's really good. Alright, let's talk about conclusions, like concluding this all. So first of all, if you're doing some virtual machines and all that, just do not get the M1 Mac, guys. This is not for you, seriously. This is like virtual machines, and M1 Mac is just like, no. Unless you're using the ARM version of Linux, but I don't know, if you're doing that, maybe it's okay. Like, it's getting better, it's getting there. Not ideal though. Windows on ARM is also not really great. It works for many cases, and there are some x86 emulation, but it's not comparable to real things. So I don't know. I feel like if you're doing that kind of virtual machine stuff, just forget about M1 Mac, or buy a secondary computer which runs Windows and Linux on x86. Just do not try to combine everything into one machine. Just seriously, just get a second computer, that's it. And the second conclusion is that we're not getting any good x86 emulation options in the future. It's probably not going to be enough people to justify development of x86 kind of solutions. Just let's be real, guys. There's not enough people just to say like, oh, x86 is great, let's just keep going with it. No, most likely people need it for some kind of compatibility, and that's it. So that's why there's probably going to be nothing from VMware or something else for the x86 virtualization. UTM is, just like a kind of, UTM is not really there. It's not going to work well. So that's how it works. Talking about me personally, I think that M1 Mac is a great computer, but it's not ideal. There's some problems there and there. It sometimes freezes. I've been opening many tabs, and when you open many tabs on your Intel Mac, typically you hear like crazy fan noise, right? Just like something like blows up basically. But it's not the case with M1 Mac, because you cannot even hear like anything, just like nothing. It's not heating up. Well, sometimes it's heating up a little bit, but you cannot even understand like what's going on. So that's why if you want to understand what's going on with your Mac and like why it's slowing down, you need to install additional plugins and software to be able to see like what's going on with your RAM and processor, right? So which is kind of surprise. But it still freezes up. It's not perfect. I've been having some problems with the ports. Sometimes I plug stuff in, for example my hard drive, and like after a few minutes just like drops out. It's like, oh wow, just disconnect. So I don't know, is it just specifics for the M1 platform, or what's going on? Maybe some operating system problems as well. So it feels like, again, something is different from Intel. Different doesn't mean worse, different doesn't mean better, it's just different. Some stuff you need to adapt to. It's not ideal. And that's how it is, guys. So I hope it was interesting to watch. I hope I brought up some interesting points that we can discuss down below in the comments. It's almost a new year, so let's celebrate. Alright guys, see you in the next year. It's gonna be perfect and interesting. There'll be more stuff coming. Yes! And press the like button please as well. Please, come on.